welcome to River Reflections. This is a program brought to you by Grand Rapids River of Life Ministries, the ministry you just saw in our role, and that is us. And we always want to make sure you know you are welcome to visit us at any time. My husband Robert and I are the pastors of the church, and we have many other fine leaders as well. Tonight I'm going to teach about one of the commandments of God, and that's honoring your mother and father, but it has some other implications too. One of our staff members, when I said this is what I was going to teach on tonight, mentioned that what a nice thing to go into the holiday season with is we might want to brush up on our honoring as we're around our parents, our grandparents. But you know, when we talk about honoring moms and dads, the Bible speaks of relationships in the church, like moms and dads as well. So we need to cause this to apply to that too. Of course, the honor your father and mother that your days may be long, that's a specific commandment having to do with your literal mom and dad who are raising or raised you. You know, I don't know if that commandment ever ends. In the New Covenant, the word says to obey your mom and dad, and I know that at a certain age, say we're 40, 50 years old, or even 35 out of the home, there is a point at which you know very well it's no longer a mandate to obey your earthly father and mother, but I think the commandment to honor them always remains. Let's get into the topic, and you'll see different layers of it uncovered as we go along. First of all, I'll start with the original source of this commandment in Exodus 20, verse 12. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God hath given thee. And that's repeated in the New Testament, and it mentions this commandment as being the first command with promise. I like the fact that it's actually repeated in the New Covenant, and other commandments are repeated too, but my point is, just because we're New Covenant believers does not mean we don't still look at the 10 commandments given to Moses on Mount Sinai. They're still important today that we follow those commandments, but right now we're dealing with this one. And the Bible, not the Bible, the dictionary says, to honor someone is to treat them with appropriate regard and respect, to promote them in your talk, to consider them valuable, to hold them in high esteem. Now, you know, there's people that are horrible parents. Some fathers stay drunk. Mothers can be verbally abusive. Somebody can desert. Absentee father not supporting. You could do, you know, somebody can be just very immature and embarrassing. You know, you think of those families that have fathers where you think of the word honor, and then you kind of shudder when you think about being commanded to honor that individual. And I don't see that the honor means that we have to condone everything they do or act as if that particular father or mother is the best example of what a parent should be. But if that's your mom or dad, you know, as long as they have breath, you should be praying for them to become Christians. You need to value them, highly regard them just because of who they are in your life. They're your parents, whether or not they've been good parents. Of course, it's easy to honor parents that are wonderful parents. It's a lot harder to honor a parent that we could look at that person and say they are not worthy of honor. That's not the point. The point is we're commanded to esteem them and to treat them as valuable. You have to think twice before you dishonor, and I'm going to tell you what dishonor is like too, but I want to say that there was this one young, and her father is gone now, he's dead, but when this young lady was getting married, her father was an alcoholic, and I mean, he eventually died of alcoholism. He was an advanced alcoholic who would end up on the streets and the missions, and embarrassing the way where his alcoholism took him to. And there were other things as well in his life that were just shameful and embarrassing. But when it came time for her to get married, she was debating whether or not to even invite her father, to tell her father whether or not, to tell her father that the wedding was even going to happen. And I said to her, I said, honey, please invite your dad. Please invite him. And we had a big guy in our church at that time, and he was a prison guard. And I said, tell you what, let's have him keep an eye on him. And if he comes in drunk and disorderly, we'll just kindly ask him to leave. But we'll pray that he comes with some dignity. And, and the guy, he put in his false teeth. Thank God. And he put a little suit on and combed his hair real nice, and for all the world he looked like a successful businessman that day. And she was able to have pictures with him, and I'm thinking, now when she shows the wedding pictures to her son, she can say, there's your grandpa. That was at our wedding. She doesn't have to tell the whole story, but at least for that day, he was being honored, regarded as her father, whether he deserved it or not. And I believe if you'd ask her, she would tell you she's very, very, very glad she had him there, because it wasn't long after that he in fact died, like I said, of the alcoholism. And when we if our parents are going to be saved, if our parents are going to straighten out, they're going to straighten out a lot quicker with us being kind and regarding them with respect than they would be if we just put them down and disdained them. This is a commandment. This is not a choice. This is a commandment. And you know what? There might be a father or a mother that is mentally ill or so dangerous that the fact is you don't want to invite them to the Thanksgiving gathering or whatever may case be. And in some cases that might be wise. But you never stop praying for them. You never stop hoping that there'll come the time that you can invite them. Maybe you'll think of a strategy like I did with this wedding, where unbeknownst to that dad, there was a bodyguard there on the occasion. He didn't even know. He never needed it. Never needed the guy to tap him on his shoulder and say, let's get on out of here. He acted well the whole time. We have to really have a special regard for those who are our parents. To dishonored would be totally disregarding them, writing them off. Don't write anybody else off. As long as they're breathing, there's still hope. Doesn't mean you have to walk close with them, but you still care enough to hope for them. To mock them, make fun of them, put them down, that's dishonoring. You don't need to be doing that to your parent ever, no matter how much it's even true what you're saying and laughing about. You don't do that with your parent. Seeing them as worthless? No, you don't do that. Not wanting to hear what they have to say. Now, understand if somebody is stumbling drunk and loudly yelling out foolish things, I can see where you'd say, Dad, Mom, I'll talk to you again when you're sober. With respect, with love. But you don't just say, I don't even want to hear what you got to say. Like ever. I'm through with you. No, that's dishonoring. You're commanded to honor them. And by the way, anybody that's listening right now who is listening to this saying, there's no way I could ever honor my parent, it's gone too far, I just pray in Jesus' name that the Lord will give you a tender heart towards that parent, and that you will pray diligently for them and await the day that you can have them around more, because their behavior is not destructive and abusive. I just pray that that'll happen to you, that you'll look for that day and not just write them off in Jesus' name. My heart goes out to those of you that hear a message like honor your mother and father, and it just dredges up hurt in your life. Probably the majority of people I'm talking to, though, do love their mom and dad. And don't put them down every chance they get. And sometimes a parent can become the object of perpetual teasing, and you really do it because you love that parent. You just kind of want to tease. But sometimes that teasing can border on dishonor, even if what you're saying is true. Say your mom or your dad has a speech impediment. Okay? Say they talk in kind of a strange way. If you start to mock it and exaggerate a mimicking of that, you know, everybody can laugh. The person with the problem can laugh. But that doesn't mean they feel honored and respected when at their expense you make them the brunt of a joke. You say, but I love my mom. I love my dad. Yes, be careful. Honor, respect. Be careful. Be careful. You're commanded, I'm commanded to respect and honor mom and dad. It's part of the big 10 commandments, right up there with stealing and murder and adultery and everything else. It's tossed right in there as a command that we're supposed to do that. There's another point that's very important to me as a woman, because I've seen a lot of even Christian families, especially very strict conservative families, where it's like the dad is the boss and mom somehow gets lined up with all the kids and dad's over all of them in the same way, and it should not be that way. The parent, yes, dad's the head of mom. That's a biblical fact. But when the two parents stand before the kids, from grown kids on down to little kids, you're one as co-regents over those children, and never should it be as if dad says it, we better do it, but if mom says it, yeah, we can kind of disregard it. Let's see what dad says. You know, the Bible says in Proverbs 1 verse 8, my son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother. Speaking of sons, there are literally some cultures on this earth, the more demonic, the worse it is, that when a young man is 12 years old, he takes his place as a man, and his mother becomes less for him in terms of honor and respect. And he begins to disdain and turn a hard jaw towards her. That is absolutely demonic. Mama should always be respected and honored and obeyed along with dad. Proverbs 6:20, it's repeated again. My son, keep thy father's commandment and forsake not the law of thy mother. It's both. Honor thy mother and thy father. And I'd say to the dads that maybe enjoy that kind of paternalistic societal edge given to dads and their authority, remember, you have authority over your wife, you have authority over your children, but you don't have any more authority over your children than your wife does. Now, having said that, I will say that together you need to talk about the rules of the house so that you can present a united front to the children, that the father doesn't pull the rank over the mom and in front of the children say, you know what, I really don't agree with that. You don't do it like that. If you see that your wife has told the kids something you don't agree with, take her aside and then let her say to the kids, Dad and I talked this over and we decided that you may go to the beach on Sunday afternoon, whatever. But don't let it be that right in front of the kids, either one of you for that matter, disregards the law of one another. You should always, especially the little ones, they're always playing the mom against the dad. We got a little girl at church, when she wants something sweet, you know, she's forever going to mom to see if she can have it. Mom says no, and she goes to dad, and dad finally caught on, and he says to mom, did she already ask you, and what did you say? Or maybe he even cuts to the chase and say, what'd your mom say? And the little girl has to admit, mom's already said no, and I guess she's eternally hoping that dad will say, never mind what your mom said. Dad says you can do it. You don't ever want to do that. You know, you might think you're going to be the nice guy, and there'll come a day the kid likes you better than the mom, and maybe there's all these little competition games going on to try to be more the source of affection for your kids than the other one. But you know what? In the long haul, when a kid grows up, and he begins to see which one was weak and which one was strong and what kind of games went down, disrespect will come from that. And Your child is commanded to honor you. You don't want to do things that are going to give forth disrespect in the home. You really don't. You really don't want to have it if mom's dad are gone or dad's gone from the house for a couple days. Oh, you know what we're going to do right now? We're going to do thus and so. Well, I thought dad didn't like it. Well, dad's not here right now. Don't play that. You're causing that child to dishonor the other parent. You're causing that child to disregard the commandment from God to honor mom and dad, to forsake not the instructions or law of either one of them. You stand together in front of the children. Please keep that in mind, that you're not doing them a favor. You're not being cute to say, we're going to have all the sugar we want while mom's gone, because you know how she is about sugar. You're not doing them a favor to teach them to be sneaky and disobedient. You really are not. Remember I told you that the commandment was repeated in the New Covenant? That's in Ephesians 6, verse 1. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. 2, honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee, and thou might live long on the earth. Sometimes I literally think about that, people that died young, and I'm curious about whether or not the issue was they didn't take care of their body, or did they fail to honor their mom and dad. Sometimes I really wonder about that. I know a woman that's getting pretty near 90, and one thing that always impressed me about her is that she took care of her elderly mother. She went in and got groceries for her, did her hair, she'd go to her mom's home every single week, and now she's hitting 90, and I often wonder if there's a correlation between her longevity and the fact that she went out of her way to take care of her mom after her dad had died. Well, it says right here that that's a factor of living long. Of course, we can shoot ourselves in the foot with bad eating and exercise habits and other things, but this is one factor God will take into account when we talk about whether or not we're going to have a long life. Here's a negative promise from God. If you disobey mom and dad, it says in Deuteronomy 27, verse 16, cursed be he that setteth light by his father or mother. Setteth light is to lightly esteem or despise. Now you think about that, how often, and this is something that I got to thinking about at church, how often maybe a young person comes up to me and says, my mom and dad, this, that, or the other. And if it can happen that I agree with the child, that I think, boy, that's strict, or that was harsh, or, I might literally in my mind agree with the child if it's true how they're telling me that. But you look at a verse like this, you don't want to set them up to be cursed, where I'm helping them lightly esteem or despise their parent for a stand that the parent has taken. I often tell people about it, I'm not going to name any names, but there was a young man that wasn't allowed to go with my son to the shopping mall when they were around 13, 14, I forgot the exact age, I think around that. And I used to think, and I might even sit it in front of the kid. I don't know why your mom and dad don't let you do that. Well, later on, the kid went to the penitentiary for armed robbery, and I'm thinking maybe they already knew he had some problems with taking things that didn't belong to him, and they wanted to make sure if he went to the mall, they were fairly close by him until he moved past that weakness and got stronger in the Lord. But my issue was, if I had said to him, which I might have, good grief, they're strict. See, I'm helping him despise and lightly esteem his parents. As I was studying for this particular lesson a week ago, I began to realize that I'd never been this convicted about that before, and I'll exhort the other parents that are listening to make sure that in the neighborhood, if you're the kids are all playing in the backyard and it gets dark earlier, say it's 6 o'clock and it's dark, if the kid has a rule, in fact it's dark at 5:30 right now, but if the kid has a rule, when the street lights go on, you're home and you're looking at the clock going, don't they realize how early it is? You don't convey that to that child of, what's wrong with your parents? Don't they realize how much earlier it is now when it gets dark? Why do you have to go home at 5:30? That's absolutely ridiculous. You do not want to say that to a child, that their parents' rule or their parents' way of doing things is ridiculous, because you set that child up to begin to get critical and smart talk, back talk their parents and do one-upmanship on their parents, like crying out loud, you guys don't know how to raise me. Other people's parents are so much better. You know, teenagers go through that phase sometime. We don't need to help them with it. We need to make sure that they know if God gave you those parents, it doesn't really matter if they ask you to do some things that nobody else has to. God knows you, and He knew what you needed. Again, I'm talking about normal, non-abusive parents. I'm not talking about abusive parents. I'm talking about normal, non-abusive. And when I say abuse, I mean put downs, you'll never amount to anything, or it can be physical abuse, like slap somebody upside the head hard, or at all, or sexual abuse, which is unthinkable. You report that immediately, Mr. or Mrs. Neighbor, if you find out for sure about that. I'm going to rewind a minute about, in case you think it's all right to hit a kid in the face. I don't happen to agree with you. If you got a little kid and you're going to give them a little swat, do it in their bottom, not their face. The Bible also says, fathers, don't provoke your children to wrath. There's something about being hit upside the head that just does not feel like love. And spanking doesn't always feel like love to a child, but at least when you look back on that, you understand. Whereas if somebody kept hitting you upside your head, you can get an attitude like that. Did not feel like love to me. I'm not going to do my kids like that. Let's do things to help our children be able to honor us. Don't do things to provoke them to wrath and rejection, legitimate wrath and rejection. It says about don't lightly set light upon your parent. Don't take them lightly, which means don't despise them. You know, I said about the church family too. Paul wrote to Titus, and that's in Titus 2 verse 15, and he said to Titus, don't let anybody despise you. And the exact verse says, these things speak and exhort and rebuke with all authority. Let no man despise you. Despise means to, in this particular context, think beyond or depreciate, say that what you're saying has little value. Don't let it happen. And what you need to meditate on here is not only Titus, who apparently was a teacher, leader in the church, but anybody in authority. I think it stands to, and go back to parents, do not let your kids despise you. Do not, no matter how funny it is, and I know they can come up with some cute little things, not cute, just hilarious comebacks, but don't laugh before you really analyze what was just said. Was it smarty pants? Was it totally inappropriate for a 6-year-old to talk like that to their parent? No matter how funny it is. Like if you get after a kid and they say, you do that too. That is talking back. That's despising, taking you lightly. Don't let them do it. And they might have so many ways of saying bratty things that are actually, if you think about them, in the natural, in the flesh, so to speak, they're kind of funny, like a stand-up comedian, but in the spirit, they're not funny at all. You're letting that child disdain, despise, devalue your authority, whereas it would be important that not only do you make them realize they can't do that to you, but they don't talk like that to any elders. They don't talk like that to school teachers or pastors or policemen or anybody in authority. I've seen young people to where you wonder who in the world raised them. Well, you know, especially like on Cops or whatever on TV. I don't know a lot of young people in my own personal life that are just wildly out there in terms of disrespect, but you see it on TV sometime where you're like, are you kidding me? I'd never dare talk like that. I think God would strike me dead if I talk like that. But just say whatever and not respect anybody. And that is just wrong, wrong, wrong. And learning respect actually starts with a child and parents, I believe, and then carries on to school and church and other areas of their life. You don't let a kid back talk or be smart. You don't let your friends, if they do it, take them aside and tell them. If your kid does that to you, kind of giggle and go, that was really fun. No, that's not really funny. That's naughty. You got to train that child. You got to train people under authority to respect authority. You cannot let a kid look down on and smart talk an adult. What it means, the opposite of this, of despising, is to favor somebody, to enjoy, admire, approve of, esteem, cherish, prize, treasure. All those are the opposite of despising. The very fact that a parent or teacher or pastor or children's church leader is taking their time to train, to feed, to nurture, to teach, that in itself ought to cause the child to say, thank you, and I favor you, I esteem you. Some kids, I don't know, used to be we had homeschool classes every Friday at our church, and what was kind of cool is after I was teaching a class there, and afterwards several of the kids would come up to me and say, thank you for teaching. And you know, I think so often, I know as a little girl, I just figured that grown folks went around with little spigots on them that you just turn it on and out comes a Bible school lesson, or vacation Bible school, or in my case at that time, Sunday school. And it was kind of like, well, of course, that's what comes out of Mrs. Vinzakama. That's what comes out of Mrs. Lanninga, is just good teaching and love and everything. But to say later, I appreciate you so much. Well, I guess when I get to heaven, I can tell those two ladies in particular how much I so appreciated their loving concern for the children in church. Even our Calvinette leaders, you know, we just don't esteem, cherish as much as we should. I know I'm talking about the law to honor your parents, but I'm extending it to the whole concept of teaching children to honor and cherish the adults in their life that take the time to train and care about them. There's too many jokes even on television about bumbling dads and moms and kids sneaking to, you know, find yourself taking the side of the kid sneaking out of, you know, a couple of 15-year-olds sneaking out of the bedroom window to go out to some dance with their boyfriends, and you're like, oh, well, that looks like fun. It kind of appeals to the little kid in us. And there's something in us that still needs to grow up that takes the side of honoring authority, be it parents or teachers, that the authority is not the bad guy, but that people that take the time to be a force in our life that's for our good and our development to go well. Think about these things and comply.